How great is our God. Where you're going to tap your foot, that's the quarter note. Okay, so even if you don't understand music theory, that's the quarter note. And what you try to do then is against this quarter note pattern, I'll try to play simple patterns. And in the beginning, start very simple. So one of the simplest patterns I can think of is this. Can everybody here play that? Alright, so now we play a quarter note against that. And when you get home, you can try that. We can have someone come up and try it on the drums over there. Maybe you can try it. And we'll find out where your independence ends. It's very easy to find out how quickly independence will collapse. And it's very challenging. Independence is very challenging, but it's very, very, very beneficial. And so the simplest pattern then would be... Alright, so if you could do this, then you try different patterns. We will. Alright, cool, fine. Another pattern. These straight eights. Alright, cool. Now what about 16 notes? Like, how great is our God? What you want to be aware of with independence is if I choose eighth notes here, don't adjust it. This will be the temptation. This hand starts trying to follow this foot. And why? The way your brain works is that, you know, one side controls one side. That's why if people suffer seizures, usually it affects one side of their body. These two guys, these two rights like to play together. These two lefts like to play together. Right with left or left with left. So doing stuff like this. Getting your hand, left hand to play with the right foot is a nightmare. I mean, you can try it. Try it slow. When you get home, here's one exercise. So we'll just work through independence here. An exercise when you go home. Single stroke roll. You want to work on independence, so we'll put quarter notes on the hi-hat. And so here's a single stroke roll, quarter notes on the hi-hat. Now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, with every number that I speak, I'll try to put in the bass drum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm talking. Talking is another aspect. If you ever try to talk, has that happened to you when someone's like, "Hey, can we get lunch?"
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's an extra level of independence. So if you think you've got independence, there's actually 5. Really, you could speak things, or you know, the thinking. It's kind of like your brain. Let's say your brain. You know, I think they say we use like 10% of our brain or something like that. You know, you don't use your brain. You don't use your whole brain, or you'd be like Einstein level. He didn't even use his whole brain. So when you first start out, it's like you're using 100% of your brain. Well, part of your brain is used to just breathe and things you don't think about, right? But your brain is telling your body to do that, heart pump, you know, or whatever, these things that you don't think about. So whatever brain is left, the better you get with independence, it gets put basically on autopilot. You don't even think about it anymore. And so, once I can play that, offbeat 8th notes. So here's my pattern again. 1, 2, 3, offbeat 8th notes. 1, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 3. Straight 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now you might say, well, okay, you're not really changing anything except that pattern. Well, I want you to be aware of the 3 hi-hat patterns to get started. So quarter note, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Offbeat 8, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Straight 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Why? Why would you need to be aware of that? Now check it out. Let's imagine I was playing How Great Is Our God. And say, we talked about energy and building things. Listen to what this voice does. Here's the pattern. No hi-hat. Now listen. Just locked in a little nicer. To me, I like it better. 1. Now you might say, that feels better. The offbeat 8 gives it this hop. It's almost like jazz. Straight 8. So I can change all these things about the groove without having even changed the groove yet. Now, as a drummer, the song leader or somebody's going to say, hey, check out this song. And then you're going to hear a song, and maybe it does this. You hear the cymbal doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's an ostinato. An ostinato is a repeating pattern. This is an ostinato. So you guys already play ostinatos. This is a different ostinato. 1, 2, 3. Now let's say that this ostinato, I hear a new ostinato, it's irrelevant what the song is. I'm just using, you might say, how do I come up with patterns? Well, you could buy books, obviously, and get patterns from there. Or you could use the musical references you already know, which there are plenty of. Trust me, the drummers you're listening to do all of these types of independence things. So now let's say if I play this 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I practice it against my how great is our God pattern. All right, so I'm able to do that. Now we'll put in the quarter note hi-hat. Offbeat. Straight 8. There's another ostinato. Single-handed 16th on the hi-hat. Now here you can't do too much because I'm already on the hi-hat. Down. Another one. So it's all about coming up with different ways to twist, and you could spend a very, very long time working out independence. I have sheets that I'm going to give out. I have 30 sheets, so what we'll do later on, we'll get a little bit more into independence using those sheets. If you come up with basic patterns, Gary Chafee, if you've ever heard of him, he has a series of books, patterns, and it's 4 books. They have different colors, technique patterns, sticking patterns, something else patterns. There's one patterns book that has fat back exercises. It has 22 exercises of different places of how you put in the 16th note. And if you use these types of ideas, even the 8 notes, there's eight notes in a bar. So it's not, I mean, you may sit back and you're like, whoa, how do you do that? That's almost impossible. But really, there are 8 eighth notes. There are 16 16th notes. So it's really not that impossible. And even if you were to turn on the radio today and listen, like, even in church, say nothing is impossible. 2 possible patterns, right? Right? All right. I am a friend of God. Lord, you are good. I mean, most church patterns. I am freedom. You know, like how many of them are that vibe? You know, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. You know, it's like so many of them are 4 on the floor is what you call that. So what I'm saying is you don't have to practice every conceivable pattern out there, which there are, you know, 16 to the power of 16, I guess, possible patterns, if my math is right. Some mathematician here can correct me on that, right? If you did 16 times 16, that would be every possible pattern of 16-note patterns there are. But that's irrelevant because how many church songs do you know, or even how many songs do you know that do this? Can someone tell me one song that uses that pattern? Or this one? One song. So you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the patterns are almost irrelevant to an extent. There are certain patterns that you should be very good at. You know, 1. Here's a very common one. Radio everywhere. Here's another one. Almost the same as the other one was. Here's another one. I mean, there are certain patterns you're just going to run into all the time, and those are the ones that you really work out how it's going to feel. And the other thing with independence is the more you do it, the easier it gets. So the more you practice independence, for example, the first time you do this, it might take you a whole day. You might practice for 4 hours, and you're like, oh, it's so hard, I can't believe it. And then the next day you do this. And you did it in 1 hour. 75% less time. You finished it. The next day you do this. You did it in 15 minutes. The next day you do this. You did it in 5 minutes. The next time your worship leader gives you a song, and you were able to almost play it immediately. That's how it works with independence. It's that first one. That first one will spank you. But everyone after that, it just really gets a lot easier. So if you never, conquer that first mountain with independence, that problem on independence will always be with you. Once you first get it, it's almost like downhill. It's like that first one, you're at the peak of the mountain, and the rest of it is you're just cruising downhill. So it just gets easier as you go. So, battle through the first rough one, and we'll get a little bit more into independence a little bit later, but hopefully that gives some ideas about independence. Anything else? I mean, on independence too, if you really wanted to, I mean, you could get into, you could go into mambos and songos and all of these types of Latin patterns and swing. They all have their own, bigger problems, I think. For pop rock, independence is a little bit easier than when you get into swing, Afro-Cuban, Brazilian styles. The independence that's involved in those styles is much more difficult. So, with what I said, the harder, the bigger mountain you've climbed, the easier it gets. If you can play a samba, church music should be pretty easy. You know what I mean? Like, if you can sit down and go... Like, I mean, come on. Is that really hard anymore, So, you could just say, look, the first groove I'm going to tackle is a samba. It may take you 1 month. But trust me, when you beat that samba, you know what I mean? Like, everything just your whole perspective just changed. Like, all of pop rock just, it's like way down there already. So, that's kind of how independence is. But don't be afraid to really just pound your head against the wall and get through it. That's really the only way through it. I cannot prescribe you a pill at Mercury, independence pill. We do not have that yet. I wish we did. I also could use such a pill. All right, anything else? Questions? Independence.